Hey you guys, it's Kim. So I was working yesterday and been busy over the weekend. But I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it's like the White House posted 100 days of hoaxes cutting through the fake news. And this is from the White House on April 29th or 2025. It says since President Donald J. Trump took office 100 days ago, it has been nonstop deluge of hoaxes and lies from Democrats and their allies in the fake news, suffering from terminal cases of Trump derangement syndrome. They'll eventually have a diagnosis for this in the DSM, I'm sure of it. But it says in no particular order, here are some of the most egregious hoaxes peddled by the usual suspects so far in President Trump's second term. It says hoax. Fake news. CNN attempted to fact check President Trump's claim that the Biden administration spent millions on making mice transgender. It says after their so called fact check was thoroughly debunked, they were forced to update it in disgrace and admit the claim was in fact true. It says hoax. The fake news claim the Department of Defense removed General Colin Powell's name from a list of notable Americans buried at Arlington Cemetery. It says fact, no service members' names were removed from that section, and General Powell's name remains among those listed. It says hoax. Representative Eric Swalwell, remember Fang Fang the spy, Democrat from California, claimed no president presided over more plane crashes during the first month as office as President Trump. It says there were 55 aviation accidents in the U.S. between Biden's inauguration on January 21st, 2021, and February 17th, 2021, compared to 35 during the same period for Trump, Fox News reported. Hoax. Governor J.B. Pritzker, Democrat from Illinois and Chicago public schools officials claimed without bothering to verify that ICE agents had conducted a raid at an elementary school, a false claim echoed by media outlets, including the Chicago Tribune. Fact, it was actually the U.S. Secret Service investigating a threat related to immigration. A hoax. Far left influencers and other leftist hacks falsely claimed the Department of Government Efficiency and Elon Musk were out to cut Social Security. It says fact, they were referencing an interview in which Musk was clearly referring to the tremendous amount of waste, fraud, and abuse within entitlement programs. Hoax. The media smeared Doge, a young, inexperienced engineers engineering a government takeover. Fact. In reality, Doge is led by seasoned industry professionals, including successful CEOs who paused their lives to aid in the effort of streamlining government and holding the bureaucracy accountable. It says hoax. NBC's Peter Alexander peddled the lie that constituents in some traditionally red districts were unhappy with President Trump's efforts to cut waste, fraud, and abuse in government. The same protests cited by the fake news were funded and organized by far left special interest groups. Hoax. NPR claimed NASA astronauts Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore, who were stuck on the International Space Station for more than 9 months following problems with their spacecraft, were not stranded. NPR itself had described the astronauts as stranded in prior reporting and only seemed to take issue with the description once President Trump and Elon Musk made it a priority to bring them home. Hoax. A foreign fake news outlet reported that President Trump shut down the British Prime Minister during a news conference. In reality, President Trump was simply moving on from a reporter who was trying to goad the two leaders into division, which they're good at. It says hoax. NPR falsely claimed the White House was actively searching for new Secretary of Defense. This lie was immediately shut down by multiple Trump administration officials, including President Trump himself. Hoax. The fake news attempted to paint illegal immigrant gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia as an innocent Maryland father who was unjustly deported by the Trump administration and actively censored the truth about him. It says fact. Abrego Garcia is a citizen of El Salvador and was deported to his home country amid overwhelming evidence of his gang affiliation. Hoax, deranged filmmaker Michael Moore questioned whether deported illegal immigrants would go on to cure cancer or stop that asteroid that's gonna hit us. And then it says, fact, Moore's statement was a strong early contender for the dumbest, most ridiculous statement of the year, considering those deported illegal immigrants were violent criminals. And it says, hoax, the fake news portrayed Mahmoud Khalil, a pro Hamas radical who led violent protests in Colombia, as an innocent graduate student with an absolute right to remain in the U.S. Fact, an immigration judge ruled Khalil, who is not a U.S. citizen, can be deported. Hoax, the Financial Times reported that senior White House counselor Peter Navarro wanted to remove Canada from the Five Eyes intelligence sharing network. Fact, Mr. Navarro immediately shut down this fake story. Hoax, a foreign fake news reporter claimed President Trump referred to European nation as parasites. Fact, President Trump immediately pushed back on this ridiculous claim, as did the Italian Prime Minister. Hoax, fake news, CNN's Brianna Keilar implied that Trump administration was somehow wrong for stopping illegal migrants or immigrants from stealing taxpayer dollars in the form of welfare benefits. Fact, Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller summarily embarrassed her with the facts. The federal government will find every illegal alien who is stealing American taxpayer dollars, and that's what Americans expect to happen. I don't even fathom the premise of your question. It says, hoax, a favorite refrain of the fake news is that Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is anti-vaccine. Fact, Kennedy debunked the lie in his confirmation hearings. That this has been repeatedly debunked. Bring this up right now is dishonest. Hoax, Wired falsely claimed the Social Security Administration is shifting its public communications exclusively to X under President Trump. Fact, it's not happening. Hoax, Reuters falsely reported that the Trump administration stalled a United Nations program in Mexico aimed at stopping imported fentanyl chemicals from reaching the country's drug cartels. Fact, the Department of State is actually trying to expand the initiative. Fact, the fake news frequently pushed the lie that as part of the Trump administration, Secretary Kennedy would implement a national abortion ban and restrict or even ban medication abortion without a single act of Congress. Fact, Secretary Kennedy consistently pledged to implement President Trump's policies, which include leaving abortion to the states, ending barbaric late-term abortions, protecting conscientious objections, and ending federal funding for abortions. It says, hoax, fake news savant Tara Palmieri falsely reported that President Trump's proposal for Gaza was conceived by Jared Kushner. In fact, this lie was immediately and summarily debunked by the Trump administration. The worst reporter in America makes up fake news for clout because she has no real sources. Sit down, dummy. Oh my goodness. It says, hoax, Senator Chris Murphy, Representative Jasmine Crockett, and media outlets claim President Trump's directive to pause radical, wasteful government spending meant an end to Medicaid, food assistance, and other individual assistance programs. Fact, individual assistance programs, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, etc., were explicitly excluded, as was made clear by Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt in the Office of Management and Budget. Only unnecessary spending, so DEI, Green New Scam, NGOs that undermine the national interest, were included in the directive. And then hoax, a physician's advocacy group was widely cited as opposing President Trump's nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. In fact, the advocacy group was really an astroturf partisan organization funded by prominent left-wing donors and accepted fake signatures. Hoax Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat from Virginia, and other Democrats pushed the lie that Doge posted classified information on their website. It says, sorry, let me turn this off. That fact classified, or that, excuse me, fact, that alleged classified information was really just an employment account, which has been publicly available for years. Hoax, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a Democrat from Florida, claimed Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem called all Venezuelan immigrants dirtbags. Secretary Noem actually called illegal immigrant members of the vicious Tren Aragua gang dirtbags, which is true. The New York Times wrote that Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wanted to ban fluoride in drinking water and reverse one of the most important public health practices in the country's history. And in fact, New York Times made no mention of their own reporting that fluoride may be linked to lower IQ scores in children. It says hoax Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, repeatedly lied about President Trump going after Social Security. In fact, President Trump has repeatedly pledged to protect Social Security and make it more robust for American citizens. Hoax. Senator Mark Kelly, Democrat from Arizona, attempted to scare veterans by shamelessly claiming their care was in jeopardy due to layoffs at VA hospitals. In fact, the lie was debunked by Secretary of Veterans Affairs Doug Collins. What changes are you talking about? We've not had those layoffs. I put $360 million back into community care. It's concerning to me that a veteran would actually tell stories to veterans that are not true. Isn't he the same one that changed in his Tesla for a Suburban, the gas guzzling Suburban, as they complained about? It says hoax. Representative Jasmine Crockett, Democrat from Texas, exploited the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport plane crash tragedy by claiming President Trump froze the hiring of air traffic controllers. In fact, air traffic controllers were exempt from the federal hiring freeze. Hoax. Here she is again. It says hoax. Representative Jasmine Crockett, Democrat from Texas, implied that cutting members of an aviation advisory committee was somehow a cause of the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport plane crash tragedy. In fact, the advisory group hadn't met since 2023 and was comprised of business and union leaders who gave advice to the TSA and had nothing to do with the actual air travel. And then hoax, a far-left writer claimed Elon Musk and Doge staffers illegally installed a commercial server to control federal HR databases that contain sensitive personal information, including social security numbers, home addresses, and medical histories. In fact, a top official confirmed there's nothing illegal and no server, just more made-up tall tales from uninformed career bureaucrats. Hoax. The Washington Post alleged that Trump administration was setting quotas for immigration authorities and gave the administration just 4 minutes to comment before publishing. In fact, as usual, this was a fake story. Hoax. Online liberal activists claimed President Trump took down President Obama's portrait in the White House. In fact, Obama's portrait was not taken down. It was simply moved only feet away from its previous location. Hoax. Senator Mazie Hirono, Democrat from Hawaii, claimed Attorney General Pam Bondi created a weaponized task force. In fact, it was a task force to end weaponization at the Department of Justice. Hoax. CBS News reported that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth ordered a makeup studio be installed inside the Pentagon. In fact, it was a totally fake story, and the alleged studio was really an existing green room with no frills. Hoax. Politico reported the Trump administration was debating lifting sanctions on Russian energy assets, including the Nord Stream pipeline. Fact, this was debunked by both Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Hoax. An illegal immigrant in U.S. custody simply disappeared, the New York Times reported. Fact, the illegal immigrant was a confirmed member of the vicious Tren de Aragua gang. An immigration judge ordered his removal, and he was deported along with other threats to national security. Hoax. The Wall Street Journal alleged that Special Envoy Steve Witkoff was receiving sensitive information on a personal phone while in Moscow, and that Russian intelligence must have had access to the information. Fact, this is a total fabrication. Special Envoy Witkoff did not even have a personal phone with him in Russia. He had only a government phone, a secure line of communication. Hoax. The Wall Street Journal claimed the Trump administration sought to portray deported criminal illegal immigrant gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia is violent. Fact, Abrego Garcia's own wife filed an order of protection against him and testified that he brutally beat her. Hoax. An AP reporter claimed that FAA staff who worked on radar landing and navigational aid maintenance, among others, were harassed on Facebook by Doge. Fact, that was a total lie. Doge doesn't have a Facebook page, and no professionals who perform critical safety functions were fired. Let's see. The Daily Beast claims Vice President J.D. Vance broke one of the most notorious Vatican rules during his Easter weekend visit by being photographed in the Sistine Chapel. Fact, buried all the way down in the 14th paragraph, the Daily Beast admitted the vice president was given special permission by the Vatican to have photographs taken inside the Sistine Chapel. It says hoax. Left-wing social media accounts promoted fake AI-generated audio of Vice President Vance disparaging Elon Musk in private. Fact, the audio was debunked as fake. Hoax. The New York Times reported that funding for the Women's Health Initiative was being slashed by the Department of Health and Human Services. Fact, Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. himself declared this fake news and recognized the project is mission critical. My goodness, there's a lot of these. It says hoax. Fox News' Jennifer Griffin gave legitimacy to a hoax from delusional reps Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the Democrat from Florida, and Rosa DeLauro, Democrat from Connecticut, that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth requested nearly $140,000 in upgrades to his government residence. Fact, the lie was debunked by Secretary Hegseth, and it was so outrageous, even the AP was forced to admit it was completely fake. Huh. It says hoax. Representative Don Bayer, I guess, or Beer, Democrat from Virginia, and many others claim that Supreme Court ordered the return of illegal immigrant gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the United States. Fact, even CNN admitted that's not what happened. They did not order the administration to return him to the United States. They could have said, we order him returned, but they did not do that. I think they say they just had to facilitate his return, but he can't make a foreign governor or president do that. It says hoax. Joe Biden accused the Trump administration of taking aim at Social Security. Fact, as usual, he was lying. President Trump has repeatedly pledged to protect Social Security. You're just going to turn off the taps for those that are over 120 something years old. Got it? Okay. It says hoax. Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat from California, claimed the arrest of a Milwaukee judge who helped an illegal immigrant evade arrest was unprecedented. Fact, it wasn't. It has happened before. Hoax. Senator Tammy Baldwin, a Democrat from Wisconsin, called the arrest of a Milwaukee judge who helped an illegal um, immigrant evade arrest a gravely serious and drastic move. Well, yeah. In fact, the judge violated the law by obstructing an ICE arrest of an illegal immigrant. Yeah, you break the law, you go to jail. Duh. It says hoax Senator Amy Klobuchar, I guess she's a Democrat from, is it Minnesota or Michigan? I don't know. I don't care. It says claimed the arrest of a Milwaukee, oh, guess, yeah, Minnesota, uh, Milwaukee judge who obstructed an apprehension of a criminal illegal immigrant threatens the rule of law. In fact, it literally does the opposite because no one is above the law. Hello. Hoax Politico claimed the Trump administration wiped out firefighter health and safety programs. Fact, the programs remain a top priority for the administration and will remain intact. Hoax Senator Elizabeth Warren claimed that President Trump's policies make it so no one wants to make investment in the United States. In fact, President Trump has secured more than $5 trillion in investments since taking office, which is expected to create more than 451,000 new jobs, and the list is only expected to grow. Hoax. NBC's Kristen Welker peddled a fake news hoax that the Trump administration was deporting children. In fact, Secretary of State Marco Rubio shut down her desperate attempt at a hoax by highlighting how the mother, who was in the country illegally, made that choice all on her own. Hoax. The New York Times implied President Trump was alone and wearing blue suit to the funeral of Pope Francis. Fact, photos show dozens of world leaders and other attendees, many situated near President Trump, also wearing blue clothing. It says hoax teachers union boss Randy Weingartner accused President Trump of taking teacher salaries and giving them to billionaires by cutting the Department of Education. In fact, President Trump has reportedly called teachers the most important people in this country. It should be paid more, not less. The federal government does not pay the salaries of teachers. State and local governments do. Hoax. Oh my goodness. The fake news and their predictable allies run with the story that claimed an American citizen was detained by authorities after he informed them he was in fact a citizen. Fact, that's not what happened. The individual approached Border Patrol in Tucson and stated he had entered the U.S. illegally through Nogales. He said he wanted to turn himself in and completed a sworn statement identifying as a Mexican citizen who had entered unlawfully. A few days later, his family presented documents showing U.S. citizenship. The charges were dismissed and he was released to his family. Hoax. PBS News claimed Doge operatives attempted to gain access to secure spaces, implying they attempted to access classified information without approval. In fact, this wasn't even remotely true. Hoax. The AP falsely claimed Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard said President Trump is very good friends with Russian President Vladimir Putin. In fact, the AP was humiliatingly forced to retract its story, admitting they were wrong. Stephanie Rule also had to issue a correction. DNI Gabbard was referencing President Trump's relationship with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Hoax. Student visa holders should have unfettered access to do whatever they want in the United States. Fact, wrong. As Secretary of State Marco Rubio said, when you apply to enter the United States and you get a visa, you are a guest. If you tell us when you apply for a visa, I'm coming to the U.S. to participate in pro-Hamas events, that runs counter to the foreign policy interests of the United States. If you had told us you were going to do that, we never would have given you the visa. So as you can see, this, among other hoaxes that have been spread since Donald Trump entered the political, oh my gosh, the political green arena. Oh man, they've just been trying to smear him ever since, and all the people surrounding him. Let's see what this article say. I'm not gonna read them all, but wow, participates in bilateral meeting. Okay, just looking. Oh wow, so you can go through here. I'll link all this in there in the comments or the descriptions, and then you can go in there and look at this if y'all want to. But yeah, this is crazy how many hoaxes. But yeah, we had a Russian hoax and whatever else, all the different hoaxes into 2000. Well, during his first term anyway. But I'll link this in there and you can go through it, look at the article, see what you can figure out if you so choose. I just thought I'd share that because I was like, I get all these emails from the White House and I thought it was pretty interesting. But yeah, so we know the media is lying to us. But anyway, I will talk to y'all later. Have a good afternoon. See y'all. Bye.